Chapter 1. The First Letter. Riley James had always found comfort in quiet places. The early morning porch before the city stirred, the corner booth in the back of the cafe, or the echo of an empty school hallway just before the first bell rang. Today was one of those mornings. Gray light seeped through the school windows, giving everything a foggy softness, like the world had taken a deep breath and hadn't let it out yet. She walked with steady steps, the soles of her sneakers barely making a sound on the tiled floors. In her hand, she held a single cream envelope, unmarked except for the handwritten words, "To someone who needs this today." She had no idea who the locker belonged to, but something about number 218 always caught her eye. It was slightly dented, a sticker half peeled from its corner, as if the person using it never really cared to decorate it. That felt familiar. Riley slid the envelope into the locker's small vent. She held it there for a second longer than necessary, then let it go. It made a soft rustle as it landed inside. She didn't look back. That was the rule. She never stayed long enough to be seen. She used to be the type of girl who wanted to be seen, who raised her hand in class, made goofy videos with friends, helped plan school events. But that was before Jonah, before the accident, before her house got too quiet and her parents stopped laughing in the kitchen. Now, being invisible felt safer, easier. The letters started as a project for herself. Little bits of journal entries she'd torn out, rewritten in neat handwriting. Not confessions, exactly, but truths. Words that had once helped her survive the day. She thought maybe, just maybe, those words could help someone else too. She'd written 6 letters so far, all anonymous, all left in different lockers over the last 3 weeks. No responses. No one even knew it was her. And she liked it that way. It made the world feel a little less cold to know someone, somewhere, might be reading her words and feeling less alone. But today, something would change. Third period dragged on in a haze of equations and chalk dust. Riley stared at the whiteboard, her mind elsewhere. The letter had been one of her more vulnerable ones. Something she'd written late at night, while sitting on the floor of Jonah's old room, breathing in the smell of old books and his favorite peppermint gum. "You don't have to be perfect to be loved," it said. "You don't have to carry everything on your own. Some of us are barely holding on to." She wasn't trying to be deep. She was just tired of pretending she wasn't drowning. At lunch, Riley sat in her usual spot at the edge of the library near the window. She liked it there, the way the sun filtered through the blinds and painted stripes across the carpet. She pulled out her sandwich and took a small bite, chewing without really tasting anything. Then, as she opened her backpack to grab her sketch pad, she noticed something that hadn't been there before. An envelope. Cream, just like hers. Unmarked. Her heart stalled for a second. She looked around the library. No one was paying attention to her. The table across the room was filled with freshmen laughing over TikToks. A few sophomores whispered near the printer. The librarian was behind the desk, scanning barcodes and tapping on her keyboard. Riley picked up the envelope with cautious fingers. Her palms were already clammy. She opened it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. Inside was a single piece of paper. Typed. No signature. "I didn't know I needed your words until I read them. You don't know me, and that's okay. Just, thank you." That was all. Short, clean, straight to the point. But to Riley, it might as well have been a novel. She blinked once, twice, then again. Her throat tightened unexpectedly, and she folded the letter carefully, pressing it against her chest. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed someone to hear her. Not even know her, just hear her. And now someone had. She didn't smile. Not exactly. But the fog inside her chest lifted, just a little. That night, Riley sat at her desk, surrounded by open books, pens, and the soft hum of lo-fi music from her phone. Her room was dim, lit mostly by the warm glow of her fairy lights. She opened her journal, one of the old ones, the one she kept hidden behind her bookshelf. The pages were filled with her handwriting, notes to herself, half-written poems, song lyrics, and memories of Jonah that still hurt too much to reread. She flipped to a blank page and wrote slowly, carefully, as if the words mattered more now that someone was listening. "To whoever you are. I didn't expect a reply. I don't need one. But today, you gave me something I didn't know I was missing. Thank you. I'm not good at this kind of thing, but I think maybe the world still has room for kindness. Even if we never meet, this means something to me. And I hope it means something to you too. She stared at the letter for a long time before folding it neatly into another cream envelope. No name, no signature, just the same quiet handwriting on the front. To someone who needs this today. The next morning, she left earlier than usual. The halls were mostly empty when she slipped the new envelope into locker 218. She paused for a moment, hand resting on the cold metal. What was this? A friendship? A connection? A fluke? She didn't know yet. And maybe that was okay. Riley walked away, heart beating just a little louder than before. She didn't know it yet, but the quiet boy who would eventually write back again. He'd been watching, too. Not her face, not her clothes, just the space she left behind. And maybe, just maybe, he was hoping she'd return. Chapter 2. The Boy Behind the Letter. Eli Carter wasn't the kind of guy people noticed twice. He wasn't loud, or funny, or particularly athletic. He wore neutral colors, stuck to the same 3 classes of people: band kids, quiet kids, and anyone who hated gym as much as he did. He liked routines. He liked windows. He liked silence that didn't ask questions. But that Monday morning, something disrupted his routine, and not in the usual way. He had just opened his locker, number 218, when he saw it. An envelope, cream-colored, tucked so precisely through the vent that it looked intentional. His first thought was that someone made a mistake. Maybe a teacher misdelivered something. But there was no name on it. Just one line in looping handwriting. To someone who needs this today. He glanced around. No one seemed to be watching. He hesitated, fingers hovering. Then he pulled it out. He didn't read it until lunch. Eli never sat in the cafeteria. Too loud, too messy, too many eyes. He preferred the staircase on the east wing of the building, the one students used less since the school installed the new elevator. That day, he sat down with his usual sandwich and opened the letter like it might disappear if he wasn't careful. It was short, just a few paragraphs, but it hit him harder than anything anyone had said to him in weeks. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to carry everything on your own. Some of us are barely holding on to. He didn't know who wrote it. He didn't even know what it was doing in his locker. But something about the words felt like a mirror, a soft place to land. He folded the letter and placed it gently in his pocket like it was sacred. He had no idea why someone would do this, or how they knew. But maybe, just maybe, they'd write again. He hadn't planned to reply. He didn't even know what to say, but something about the silence after reading the letter felt wrong. He couldn't just leave it there. So he typed a note on his laptop at home, printed it, and tucked it into an envelope the next morning. No handwriting, no signature, just words. I didn't know I needed your words until I read them. You don't know me, and that's okay. Just, thank you. He walked the halls early, hoping whoever wrote to him would check again. As soon as the hallway cleared, he slid the envelope into locker 124, where he'd seen the girl a few times. Quiet girl, light brown hair, always reading or writing in her sketchpad. He wasn't sure it was her, but something in his gut said it might be. Even if it wasn't, someone needed to know their letter mattered. For the rest of the day, Eli couldn't focus. He reread the original letter twice between classes, folded and unfolded it until the edges were soft. He tucked it behind the cover of his notebook like it was the only thing worth holding on to. That night, he found himself pacing his room. His desk sat in the corner by the window, cluttered with sheet music and old notebooks. He opened a drawer and pulled out a journal he hadn't touched in months. Blank pages stared back. He hesitated. Then he wrote. Not music, not lyrics. Words, thoughts, questions. The letter had opened something in him he didn't realize was still alive. He didn't even know if the writer would answer again. But he hoped. 2 days later, it happened. He opened his locker, and there it was, a second envelope. Same paper, same handwriting, no name. This time, he didn't wait until lunch. He read it right there, the chaos of the hallway blurring around him. To whoever you are, I didn't expect a reply. I don't need one. But today, you gave me something I didn't know I was missing. Thank you. I'm not good at this kind of thing, but I think maybe the world still has room for kindness. Even if we never meet, this means something to me. And I hope it means something to you too. He read it twice. Then a third time. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't fake. This was real. And whoever this girl was, she was exactly what he hadn't known he needed. He watched her the next day. Not in a weird way. Just curious. He spotted her sitting in the library near the window, flipping through a paperback and sipping from a thermos. She looked ordinary, but the kind of ordinary that was peaceful. Eli didn't believe in fate, but he believed in meaning. And something about this felt too specific to be coincidence. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know what she'd been through. But she saw him, and he was starting to see her, too. Chapter 3, What We Don't Say Out Loud. Riley hadn't stopped thinking about the note. The words had planted themselves in her like seeds, curling in the soil of her soul and refusing to leave. They were simple, not poetic or polished, but they were real. Whoever had replied understood something about her heart that she didn't know anyone could. She spent most of the next few days wondering who it was. It was an obsession, not exactly. More like curiosity. Gentle, nagging curiosity. Not about the person's face or voice or favorite color, but about their why. What had made them respond? What had they needed her words for? And more importantly, what else were they carrying that they hadn't said? She looked for signs, not intentionally, but her eyes moved differently through the hallways now. Her gaze lingered on backpacks, the way someone walked, the silence between words. Was it the boy who always wore headphones in English? The girl who sat alone during lunch by the vending machines? The guy in the green hoodie who read upside down in the library? She didn't want to guess wrong. And maybe it was better not to know. Friday afternoon, she got another reply. The envelope was left inside her locker again, tucked neatly between the folds of her English workbook. She hadn't even seen anyone near it. Just opened her locker, and there it was. Cream paper, slightly heavier this time. She looked around, casually, trying not to seem obvious, then pulled it out and slid it into her tote before anyone noticed. She didn't read it until she got home. By then, the anticipation was chewing a hole in her chest. She sat on the edge of her bed, kicked off her shoes, and tore the envelope open carefully. Inside were two things. 1. A typed note, like before. 2. A small drawing. A pencil sketch of a tree with roots that tangled down into the page. 3. Her chest ached. She unfolded the note first. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a room full of people, and somehow I'm still invisible. Like I'm screaming, but my voice is on mute. I never told anyone that before. But your letter made it feel okay to say. I don't know if this is weird or if it makes sense, but thanks for making space for someone like me. No name. Still, she stared at the words for a long time. They weren't dramatic, just honest. And maybe that was what made them hurt so much. The sketch caught her next. Simple lines. No shading. But the image was striking. A lone tree in the middle of an empty space, its roots sprawling deeper and deeper underground. Almost like the tree was standing tall because of the hidden roots, not in spite of them. She ran her fingers over the paper, like she might feel something the pencil left behind. Someone was trusting her. Someone was choosing her, if only in this small, anonymous way. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was floating above her own life. She felt present, grounded, seen. That night, she started writing before dinner. The words poured faster this time, not because she had more to say, but because the space felt safe now. I don't know you, but I know what it feels like to be surrounded and still alone. And I'm honored that you trusted me with your truth. You're not invisible. Not anymore. And maybe we can just keep being quiet together, if that's okay. No pressure. No expectations. Just honesty. She paused, then added one last line. P.S. Your tree sketch was beautiful. She folded the letter, slipped it into a fresh envelope, and underlined the same line she always did. To someone who needs this today. This time, her hand didn't shake when she wrote it. The next morning, she walked to school early, as she always did. She wore her hair down, tucked behind one ear, and chose the tote bag with the broken strap even though it annoyed her. Something about it made her feel real. Locker 218 was waiting. She slipped the letter inside and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. This was real now. Not fantasy, not imagination. A real exchange. Not of love or romance. Of trust. Across the building, Eli stood behind the stairwell window, watching the hallway with cautious eyes. He didn't mean to be creepy. He just needed to know. When he saw her, the girl he'd suspected, slip the envelope into locker 218 and walk away, his suspicions were confirmed. It was her. He didn't know her name, but he knew the way she walked. The way she held her tote close to her body, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to take up space. The way her eyes moved, not darting like someone afraid, but scanning like someone who noticed everything. He waited until the hallway cleared, then walked to his locker. His palms were sweating. He pulled the envelope out gently. his chest filled with something he hadn't felt in a long time: anticipation. Eli read the letter twice before folding it into his sketchbook. He hadn't meant to draw the tree. It had just happened, his pencil moving before his thoughts could catch up. He hadn't drawn since middle school. Not seriously. Not for anyone else to see. But now she had. And she liked it. He tried to ignore the small smile tugging at the edge of his mouth as he walked to his next class. Not because he was catching feelings. This wasn't a romance. This was something different. Something quieter. Something real. He didn't want to ruin it. Still, that afternoon, he found himself sketching again. This time, a pair of hands, one open, the other holding a letter. He didn't know why. Maybe because that's what this was. Not just notes and lockers, but offering a part of yourself and hoping someone would care enough to hold it gently. Chapter 4. A name without saying it. By the fourth letter, Riley had a new rhythm. She'd wake up before her alarm, scribble down thoughts she'd stored in the back of her head, then rewrite them more carefully, more gently, more intentionally. It was a kind of ritual now, one that stitched her mornings together with a purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Her grades were still fine. Her friends still waved. Her teachers still said, "Nice work, Riley," when she turned in her essays. But beneath all that surface-level movement, something had shifted. There was someone in the building who knew her, not her face or her favorite subject or the color of her eyes, but her heart, her insides, the fragile, buried parts. And she was starting to know him, too. Not by name, not by voice, just through the raw honesty in his typed notes and his quiet pencil sketches. She had 3 now: the tree, the hands, and yesterday's, a sketch of a candle, softly lit, surrounded by darkness. Underneath, he'd written one line in the corner: "Your light helped me find mine." She stared at that for nearly an hour the night before. He wasn't writing poetry, but he didn't have to. It was truth. And somehow, it was more beautiful than anything flowery she'd ever read. She almost didn't write back this time. Not because she didn't want to, but because she did. So much. There was something growing in the quiet between them. Not love, not romance, but something sacred. Something hard to name. And part of her was terrified that naming it would break it. But still, she wrote, "I used to feel invisible in this school. I still do sometimes. But every time I read your letters, it's like a piece of me steps back into the light. Not all of me, not yet, but enough to want to keep walking forward. I don't know your name. You don't know mine. But maybe it's better this way. No labels. No expectations. Just this strange, beautiful connection that doesn't need to be anything else to matter. I hope you're okay today. I hope you ate. I hope you slept. I hope someone looked at you like you were worth staying for." She almost stopped there, but her pen didn't lift. "P.S. I hope you keep drawing, even if it's just for you." She signed it with a simple, tiny drawing of a bird, open wings, mid-flight. Nothing else. Then she sealed the letter, placed it in her bag, and carried it with a nervous joy that made her toes twitch in her boots. Across town, Eli didn't know it yet, but he had started walking differently. His shoulders, once slumped to blend in, now carried a quiet tension, not fear, but awareness. His eyes lingered longer on certain hallways. His hands scribbled thoughts in the margins of his notebooks he didn't dare say out loud. He'd started drawing again every night. Not because he wanted to impress anyone, no one even knew it was him, but because something about these exchanges had given his thoughts room. A space to exist without pressure, without performance. This wasn't about grades or parents or pretending to be okay. This was about honesty, and he hadn't realized how starved he was for that. He found the new letter tucked into his locker at lunch. Cream envelope. Bird sketch in the corner. His chest tightened in the best way. He didn't read it until he was alone. This time, he didn't just smile. He breathed. Deep. Full. Real. She was still here. Still writing. Still trusting him with her thoughts. The sketch of the bird was gentle, imperfect, but it said more than words could have. He sketched something back that night. A lantern. Simple. With soft rays of light. Underneath it, he wrote, "If you ever get lost, I'll be the light until you find yours again." Then, for the first time, he considered adding his name. Not his full name. Not even a first name. Just a single initial. He typed it slowly, then stared at it. E. It didn't feel like giving too much. It felt like offering something small, safe, and real. He slipped the letter into a new envelope, sealed it, and drew a tiny star in the top corner. Not big, not bold. Just there. like a breadcrumb. When Riley opened the envelope the next day, she nearly dropped it. Not because of what he wrote, though it was beautiful, but because of that small, single letter at the bottom. E. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reread the note. The lantern, the words, the weight of them. He had told her who he was. Not fully, but enough to say, I'm not hiding anymore. And something about that made the breath catch in her throat. She stared at the paper for a long time, heart thudding so loudly she was afraid someone across the library could hear it. She didn't know it yet, but that letter, that initial, had changed everything. Not in a dramatic way, not in a movie-worthy, confetti scene way, but in a soul-level shift. Now it wasn't just letters between strangers. Now it was someone with a name, someone with a voice. And that made the next choice even harder. Would she write back with her name? Or stay silent and protect the fragile world they'd built? She didn't know yet, but she had never been more certain of this. She wanted to. Chapter 5. The Weight of a Letter. Riley spent the entire night with that letter folded under her pillow. It wasn't planned. She'd read it once in the library, again on the bus, and then 5 more times while sitting at her desk with her knees pulled to her chest. She hadn't expected him to sign it. Even just a single initial, E, felt huge. He had given her something. A piece of himself. And now, the air between them had changed. Not heavier, just more real. She laid in the soft hush of her room, moonlight brushing the corners of her ceiling. Her sketchpad sat open on the floor next to her bed, her pen cap half chewed, her thoughts everywhere. There was a comfort in the silence, but also a tension, the kind that only comes before a choice that really matters. Should she write her name? Should she stay invisible? The letters had never been about identity. They were about truth. But now that truth had a human face, or at least a human initial, she found herself craving more than anonymity. She wanted to trust back. She wanted him to know who had been reading his words and holding them like treasure. She rolled onto her side and whispered to no one. What if this ruins it? And then she whispered something softer. But what if it doesn't? By morning, she had made her decision. Her hand shook as she wrote. Hi, E. I wasn't expecting your initial. I wasn't expecting any of this, honestly. But I'm glad you did. Because now, even if I never learn more, I know you're not just a shadow. You're someone real. And I think maybe that's what I've needed most. I don't know how you've known what to say, but your words have been like light for me in a very dark hallway. I've walked these halls for months, feeling like no one noticed I was still trying. And then you noticed. Not my face. Not my clothes. Just me. So I guess it's only fair that I share something, too. She stared at the next line for a long time. Then, softly, she wrote, You can call me R. She didn't sign her full name, but she let herself exist more fully than before. A single letter. Not much, but enough to say, You're not the only one stepping into the light. She folded the letter with care. For the first time, she didn't draw a symbol. No birds. No flowers. Just the letter R, in soft cursive on the back of the envelope. And that was enough. Eli didn't go to school early that day. He couldn't. His dad had been in one of his moods again, the kind where plates clink louder than usual and the fridge door slams just a little too hard. His mom kept quiet. His sister stayed in her room. And Eli just vanished into the wallpaper like he always did when things went sideways. By the time he made it to school, his hands were shaking too much to open his locker. He pressed his forehead to the cool metal and counted to 10, then 20. Then opened it with a small, practiced breath. The envelope was there. For a split second, the chaos at home fell silent. He took it and walked straight to the stairwell, the forgotten one near the music hall, and sat on the top step like he was anchoring himself. He opened it slowly. Read it once, then again, and again. By the third time, his hands had steadied. You can call me R. Just a letter, just like his. But in that single line, he felt a connection deeper than any he'd known before. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. Maybe never. It was something else. Something he hadn't even realized he needed. A person who sees the truth in him and still writes back. He looked at the lined paper, folded it into quarters, and tucked it into his pocket. The whole day he couldn't focus. His math quiz went untouched. His history notes blurred into scribbles. Even his safe spaces, the back row of band class, the corner seat near the vending machines, felt altered. Not worse. Just more aware. Someone out there was thinking of him. Someone out there was waiting for his reply. That night, Eli stayed up well past midnight. He didn't write on the computer. He wrote by hand this time. For the first time, his words felt messy, more exposed. But real. So very real. R. I didn't think this would ever become what it is. But you've made my world feel warmer. Not louder. Just less lonely. Thank you for your letter. For your courage. For your letter, R. I've been hiding in silence for so long that I forgot what it feels like to be found. You don't have to tell me more. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to. I just want you to know. I hear you. Every word. And I'm holding them carefully. Also, I've been drawing more. I hope you don't mind. He paused, then wrote one last thing. If you could ask me anything, just one question, what would it be? E. He stared at the final line. He didn't expect an answer. But part of him was curious what she might ask, if she asked anything at all. He folded the paper, slid it into the envelope, and, after a long, thoughtful pause, added a small sketch to the corner, a tiny compass. No words, no explanation, just something to say. I want to keep finding the way forward, with you. Riley got the letter the next day. She read it at her locker, too impatient to wait. She smiled, really smiled. For the first time in a long while, it reached her eyes. And she whispered under her breath, a question, huh? Her mind spun all through class. Not because she didn't know what to ask, but because there were too many things she wanted to know. But in the end, she chose the one thing that scared her most. Chapter 6. The question that changed everything. Riley's hands hovered over her notebook for 20 minutes before she wrote a single word. She had tried to distract herself, refilling her water bottle, adjusting the lamp on her desk, scrolling through her messages, none of which she replied to, but nothing worked. Her mind circled like a bird that refused to land. He had asked her a question. If you could ask me anything, just one question, what would it be? At first, she thought of easy questions. Safe ones. What's your favorite movie? When did you start drawing? What's your biggest dream? But none of them felt honest enough. Not for what this had become. This wasn't just curiosity. This was trust, the kind of trust you don't waste on shallow things. So she flipped to a clean page, took a breath, and finally wrote, E. Your compass drawing was perfect. Sometimes I feel like I'm spinning in 1,000 directions, and your letters have helped me steady myself. Thank you. As for my question, I don't mean for it to be heavy, but it's something I've never had the courage to ask anyone out loud before. What's the thing that broke you the most, and how did you survive it? She stopped, reread it, flinched slightly, but she didn't erase it. She knew it was risky. She might scare him off. She might ask too much. But she also knew that if this connection was going to grow, it had to be rooted in truth, not safety. She folded the letter, sealed it in the familiar cream envelope, and wrote, R, on the flap in careful cursive. The next morning, she almost didn't drop it in his locker. Her hand hovered. She looked up and down the hallway. Empty. And still, her chest tightened, as if someone might see too much of her simply placing a letter in a slot. But then she thought of the compass. She thought of the candle, the roots, the hands, and most of all, she thought of how he had never flinched from her honesty. So she slid the letter in and walked away without a word. Eli felt the weight of the envelope the moment he opened his locker. It was as if the paper itself carried more weight than usual, thicker, or maybe just deeper. He waited until his free period to read it, back in the stairwell, where this had always felt safest. And when he read her question, his chest froze. What's the thing that broke you the most, and how did you survive it? He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He just stared at the sentence like it was a door he wasn't sure he wanted to open. But the longer he sat there, the more he realized that door had already been cracked. Every letter had been slowly nudging it open. And now, R had gently turned the knob. She wasn't prying. She wasn't demanding. She was asking. And that made all the difference. That night, Eli didn't touch his sketchbook. He just sat at his desk, hands folded, the hum of his fan the only sound in the room. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for an hour before he began typing. Not fast, not clean, but real. R. You asked what broke me. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. Not really. Not in a way that felt like I could answer honestly. So here's the truth. My brother left last year. Just walked out. Said he couldn't take the pressure of our family anymore. The expectations. The silence. The weight. And I didn't blame him. I wanted to leave too. But I didn't. I stayed. And it broke something in me to watch him leave without saying goodbye. We used to be close. Not perfect, but close. And when he left, it was like this giant hole opened in our house, and no one talked about it. My parents just kept moving like nothing happened. My little sister cried in her room every night. And I started disappearing quietly. Not physically, just inside. I stopped drawing, stopped talking much, started listening to music like it was medicine, started surviving one day at a time. Until your letter. I don't say that to flatter you. I say it because it's true. Your first letter didn't fix me, but it made me feel seen. Like maybe I wasn't the only one still breathing in a house that had forgotten how to live. So how did I survive? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. But your letters, your words, gave me something to hold on to. And maybe that's the first step. He folded the letter with hands that didn't shake. There were no tears, no dramatics, just release. For the first time in months, he had said it out loud, even if only in ink. He slid the letter into a new envelope and didn't add a sketch this time. Only his usual, a small, simple E at the bottom. He wanted her to read his words without distraction. Because this one was different. When Riley opened the letter the next morning, she sat down on the hallway bench before she even finished reading it. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear, from reverence. Because what he had shared was sacred, painful, honest, raw, and more than anything, offered freely. She didn't try to write back immediately. She didn't know how. All she knew was that something inside her had shifted again. This wasn't just an exchange of kind thoughts. This was healing. For both of them. Chapter 7. A Seat at the Window. Riley didn't write back for 3 days. Not because she was upset or uncertain, but because she wanted to honor the weight of E's words. Something inside her said that a quick reply would feel careless, like trying to clean up a shattered vase too quickly and forgetting how sharp the pieces still were. Instead, she carried his letter with her everywhere. In her tote, in her notebook, in the pocket of her hoodie. She reread it on the bus, at lunch, before bed. My brother left last year, and I started disappearing quietly. Those words sank deep. She had always sensed pain behind his letters, but now she saw it clearly. The silence of an abandoned hallway, the ache of an unspoken goodbye, the exhaustion of staying behind when someone else had escaped. She didn't know what to say at first. Nothing felt worthy enough, but she knew she had to say something. So she did what she always did when words failed her. She went to the window. There was a second-floor reading nook at the back of the school library, a forgotten space with a window that overlooked the teacher parking lot and a crooked oak tree that never lost all its leaves, even in winter. It was quiet there, dusty, warm, and completely still. She'd sat there often during her loneliest days, reading fantasy novels and sketching what freedom might look like. This time, she didn't read or draw. She wrote, not in her usual notebook, but in the margins of E's letter. Between the typed lines, she filled in her response by hand. E, you don't know this, but I lost someone too. Not to death, not to distance, but to silence. My mom's depression has made her a ghost in our house. Some days, she doesn't come out of her room. Some days, she forgets what day it is. Some days, she looks at me like I'm a stranger she doesn't know how to love. And the worst part? No one talks about it. My dad acts like it's just a phase. My friends don't ask. I've become so good at pretending that I don't even know what real feels like anymore. Until your letter didn't break me. It reminded me that I'm allowed to be broken. And that maybe broken isn't the end. Maybe it's just a beginning. So thank you for telling me the truth, for trusting me, for not needing to fix everything, just for staying. She folded the letter, placed it in a new envelope, and underlined 2 words in the middle. Just staying. That, she realized, was the thread tying them together. Not big promises, not solutions, just presence. 2 people choosing to show up when it would have been easier to disappear. Eli found the envelope that afternoon. It was different. He could tell immediately. She had written her reply on his letter. Her words wrapped around his like ivy climbing a wall, not invasive, just there. Holding, softening, strengthening. He sat with it in the stairwell, rereading both their words like a conversation passed across time. He wanted to reply right away. But for the first time, he didn't write a letter. He drew something. It was a simple sketch, a bench beneath a large oak tree. 2 figures sat at opposite ends, facing forward. Not talking, not touching, just there. At the bottom, he wrote 1 line. Sometimes the best kind of love is the kind that simply refuses to leave. Then, underneath that, I'll be here. Always. He didn't sign it with E this time. He didn't need to. Riley cried when she saw the drawing. Not loud sobs. Just soft, grateful tears that fell like rain on a windowsill. She tucked the image into her notebook and whispered, "I'll stay too." And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was just surviving. She felt like she was healing. Chapter 8. The Risk of Being Seen. The letters had stopped. Not permanently, just paused. It had been 5 days since Riley had last heard from me. She checked her locker like clockwork, before first period, after lunch, and once more before the final bell. Each time, her fingers hovered in quiet hope, brushing against nothing but textbooks and disappointment. She didn't panic. Not at first. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he was swamped with homework. Maybe life had crept in like it always did, loud and sudden and uninvited. But by the 6th day, the silence started to echo. Riley felt the ache in her fingertips, the quiet hollow in her chest that whispered all the old lies. "See? You're too much. You ruined it. You opened up, and now he's gone too." She didn't want to believe it. But fear was like that. It grew in silence, fed on the absence of answers. Still, she held onto the bench drawing, kept it tucked inside her planner. Sometimes just seeing it helped her breathe slower. The sketch reminded her that once, someone had said, "I'll be here." Always. She didn't want to doubt that. But always suddenly felt very far away. Meanwhile, across campus, Eli sat in the art room after school, staring at the letter he still hadn't sent. It was ready, written, folded, sealed. But it sat in his backpack like a weight he couldn't lift. The truth was, Eli had been spiraling. The silence at home had grown louder. His dad had thrown a plate 2 nights ago, yelling about the bills, about the noise, about everything and nothing. Eli hadn't drawn since. He wanted to reply. Every part of him ached too. But what do you say when you don't feel worthy of the kindness you've been given? How do you write, "I'm still here," when you're not sure you believe it? That Friday, Eli skipped his last class and walked out the side door near the old gym. He found himself in the courtyard, where a crooked bench sat beneath a canopy of half-bare trees. It reminded him of his drawing. Of her. He pulled out her last letter, rereading the words she'd written in his margins. "Your letter didn't break me. It reminded me that I'm allowed to be broken." He exhaled. And then, with shaking hands, he reached into his bag, pulled out the envelope, and walked all the way back to locker 218. He didn't hesitate this time. He slipped the letter inside and whispered under his breath, "Please still be there." Riley opened her locker Monday morning and gasped. The envelope. Not just an envelope, his envelope. Same paper, same folded edge, same tiny crease at the corner where he always sealed it carefully. She didn't wait. She sprinted to the library, heart hammering, and ducked into the corner near the reading window, their reading window. She opened it like a prayer. Inside was a letter. No sketch this time. Just words. But they were enough. I've been quiet. Not because I don't care. Because I didn't know how to be seen while I was hurting. Things at home got worse. I've been trying to be the glue, the silence, the peacekeeper. And I think somewhere in all of that, I forgot how to speak for myself. But I didn't forget you. Every day I thought about writing. I wrote 3 versions of this letter. But none of them felt good enough. Because you deserve more than fragments. You deserve truth. So here it is. I missed you. And I'm scared. Scared of being too much. Scared of messing up this quiet, beautiful thing we've built. Scared that if you really knew me, you'd leave too. But here's what I know. You didn't leave when I was broken. You didn't run when I told you the hardest part of my story. You stayed. Quietly. Faithfully. So I want to stay too. Not just with letters. With truth. I don't know where this goes. I don't need it to be a movie or a storybook ending. But I want to keep walking beside you, even if neither of us knows the road. If that's okay. Riley didn't cry this time. She smiled. A soft, steady kind of smile that didn't need anyone else to understand it. She folded the letter, tucked it into her pocket, and sat down by the window where the sun had begun to slant just right. Then she pulled out her notebook and began to write, not just in response, but in full. This wasn't just an exchange anymore. This was a friendship carved out of honesty, a space where healing happened one letter at a time. And for the first time in years, she believed that maybe, just maybe, someone could see her completely and stay anyway. Chapter 9, When the Silence Speaks. The next few weeks settled into something almost like rhythm, not routine. This wasn't the predictable hum of everyday life, but a softer beat, one Riley could finally breathe along with. Every 2 or 3 days, another letter appeared, sometimes typed, sometimes handwritten, occasionally just a sketch with a line or two underneath. And each one felt like a step forward in a journey neither of them had expected, but both were now fully walking. There were still no names, no face-to-face confessions, no dramatic reveals in crowded hallways. Only the locker, only the letters, only the truth. Dear R, have you ever felt like you're holding your breath in a room full of people who never notice? I do. Every lunch period, every group project, every family dinner. But your words, they remind me I'm still breathing. E. Sometimes I feel like a ghost walking through my own life. But when I read your words, I remember I'm still flesh and bone. Still here. Still wanted. They talked about little things now. Music they loved. Books they couldn't finish. Dreams that felt too big to say out loud. But somehow, even those details felt sacred. Because honesty had taken root between them. And once honesty grows, it changes everything. Then came the Friday, everything stopped. No letter. Riley tried to ignore it at first, told herself he was busy, tired, distracted. But by Monday, her chest had tightened again. By Wednesday, she could barely focus in class. By Thursday, she found herself staring out the library window, wondering what she had done wrong, or if she had done anything at all. She wrote 3 drafts of a letter that week, but didn't send any of them. They all sounded too needy, too desperate. She didn't want to beg for crumbs. She just wanted to know he was okay. So on Friday, she left something different in his locker. A folded piece of paper. No envelope. No name. Just a single handwritten sentence. Still here, if you are. No pressure. No questions. Just a quiet invitation. And then she walked away. Eli didn't check his locker until late. He'd been avoiding it all week. Not because he didn't want to hear from her, but because he was ashamed. The days had swallowed him. His dad had found old sketches in his drawer and thrown them out, calling them childish, useless. Get your head out of the clouds, he'd said. Dreamers don't survive this world. The words hit harder than Eli expected, and he had withdrawn again, not because he wanted to, but because old pain is loud and stubborn and demands silence in return. He thought about her every day. He just hadn't believed he was worthy of her words anymore. Until he saw the note. Folded. Simple. That sentence. Still here, if you are. It undid him. Not with drama. Not with tears. But with hope. That night, he didn't write a letter. He left a drawing. A birdcage, door wide open. A single bird flying out. Wings spread. Below it, a sentence. Freedom isn't escape. It's knowing someone sees you and stays. He signed it. Still here, too. Riley found it Monday morning. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she laughed. Really laughed. A tiny, trembling, joyful sound in the hallway no one else heard. He was still here. And that meant everything. That week, the letters became more playful. She sent him a list of 10 things that make me feel alive. He replied with 7 things I'm afraid to say out loud. She shared a childhood story about hiding in her closet with a flashlight and a journal. He wrote back with a story about his first sketchpad, a stolen math notebook with dragons drawn in the margins. And slowly, through laughter and pain, art and silence, they began to know each other. Not just the bruises, but the brightness too. Then came the moment that shifted everything. A new letter. Nothing unusual on the outside. But when Riley opened it, her breath caught. It wasn't a sketch. Not a quote. Just a single typed page. And at the bottom, my name is Elijah. She stared at it for a long time. 3 words. And yet, somehow, it felt like a world. He had trusted her with his name. His real name. She didn't know what to do at first. Laugh? Cry? Run? Instead, she did what they always did. She wrote, Elijah, that's a beautiful name. You don't have to know mine yet. I'm not hiding. I'm just still growing into it. Into being someone who believes people won't leave when they learn the whole story. But I'll tell you this much. Your name made me believe I'm not walking alone anymore. And that's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. She folded the note, slipped it into his locker, smiled, and whispered to herself, Elijah. It felt like a beginning. But she knew it was really the middle, the heart of the story, where real love, the quiet, faithful kind, begins to take root. Chapter 10. The day the letter didn't fit. It was a Tuesday morning when Riley's hand got stuck. Not figuratively, literally. She'd reached into Elijah's locker just like always, sliding the envelope inside like she had dozens of times before. But this time, something snagged. A corner. A catch. Her fingers twisted slightly, and bam, Her knuckle bumped a spiral notebook inside, and she yelped, then froze, because down the hallway, footsteps echoed. Too late to run. She quickly pulled her hand out, but not before the girl walking by, Taylor Reynolds, from yearbook committee, glanced in her direction and raised an eyebrow. Writing love notes? She smirked. Riley laughed a little too hard. Nope, just science notes. Got the wrong locker. Taylor looked skeptical but shrugged and walked on. Riley's heart thundered. Her face flushed. She wasn't embarrassed by Elijah, not even a little, but something about their connection felt sacred. Like a fragile snow globe you only take out in winter, not something you drop into the noise of the hallway for everyone to see. She stared at his locker for a few seconds longer before whispering, "Please tell me that notebook wasn't important." Then she turned and walked away, fast. Across campus, Elijah was watching his phone without really seeing it. He hadn't told Riley everything in that last letter. He'd told her his name, Elijah, but not the part that came before it. Not the hospital visit. Not the panic attacks. Not the fact that, last weekend, he had locked himself in the bathroom just to scream into a towel so his sister wouldn't hear him. He didn't want to burden her. Didn't want to make their letters about his weakness. But every time she wrote back, something in him healed a little. Not fixed, but soothed. Like salve on an old burn. And the more she stayed, the more he started to believe she meant it. Which scared him more than anything. Because hope was dangerous. It made you reach for things that could disappear. Still, he was reaching anyway. That afternoon, he opened his locker and blinked. The envelope wasn't there. Instead, a small note had been folded and taped inside the door. His breath caught. It wasn't Riley's usual paper. Not her usual ink. But it was hers. He knew it instantly. The note read, "Today, I almost got caught. I panicked. I left in a rush. And I realized something. You're the only thing I've never wanted to hide. But I don't know how to be this in public yet. I hope you understand. I'll be at the bench. Tomorrow. After school. If you want to see me, come. No name. No R. Just that. An invitation. A door cracking open." Riley didn't sleep that night. She went over everything a dozen times in her head. What if he didn't come? What if he came and looked disappointed? What if they had nothing to say out loud? But the hardest question of all was the one that had been building inside her for weeks. What if seeing him ruins it? Because in her imagination, Elijah was perfect. Not perfect like flawless, but perfect for this. For the letters. For the honesty. For the sanctuary they had built in the small spaces of silence. Seeing each other, truly seeing, meant risking all of that. Still, she knew. She had to do it. Not for the sake of curiosity, but because loving someone, even in friendship, meant being brave enough to see them fully. The next day, she skipped the bus and walked slowly across campus toward the bench. It was early spring, but the sky was gray, and the wind teased her jacket. The oak tree overhead rustled quietly. And then, from the far path near the back entrance, he came. Elijah. He walked slowly, shoulders slightly hunched like he wasn't sure he belonged in this moment. But the second their eyes met, both of them stopped. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. He sat on one end of the bench. She sat on the other. Just like his drawing. Two people. Same space. Facing forward. Present. Seen. "I thought you might not come," she whispered after a while. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "Not because I didn't want to. Just fear." She nodded. "Yeah, me too." Silence again. But it wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Full. The kind of silence that meant something. He turned to her, soft eyes wide with something between awe and relief. "You're not what I pictured," he said. "Disappointed?" "Not even close," he said. "You're real." She laughed. "So are you." They talked for an hour. Not about deep wounds this time, but about their favorite foods and the worst school lunch disasters, and how her little brother always sang off-key in the car. They laughed more than they cried. And by the end, Riley realized something. Seeing him didn't ruin it. It didn't break the spell. It deepened it. Because now, when she thought of Elijah's letters, she saw his hands, sketch-stained and gentle. She saw his eyes, tired but kind. She saw a person, not a mystery. And it made everything more. When the bell rang in the distance, neither moved. Then Elijah stood, quietly pulled something from his backpack, and handed it to her. A folded sheet of sketch paper. She opened it slowly. It was a new drawing. Two figures on a bench. But this time they were holding hands. No words. Just that. He met her gaze. "You don't have to say anything." Riley smiled softly. "Good. Because I don't have the words. But in her chest, something whispered loud and clear. I'm not alone anymore. Chapter 11, Letters No Longer Needed. The following week was strange. Beautiful. Awkward. Quietly thrilling. It was like walking through a doorway into a familiar room, but now the lights were on. Riley and Elijah had finally seen each other, and now there was no going back to just letters and quiet hopes in the dark. They still wrote, but not every day, not with the same urgency. Now, their notes were shorter. A folded scrap left under a book, a quote scribbled on the back of a quiz, a sketch drawn in the corner of a napkin. The letters had become less about survival and more about sharing the moments that made life feel a little more alive. Tuesday afternoon, Elijah met Riley under the oak tree before last period. No invitation needed now. She was there, sitting with her back against the bench, legs stretched out, journal open in her lap. He dropped his bag beside her and sat without a word. They were quiet for a while. A breeze drifted past, shaking a few stubborn leaves loose. Finally, Elijah broke the silence. I've been thinking about your first question. Riley turned slightly. Which one? The one that started it all. About being seen. She looked at him, remembering. What's something no one sees about you, but you wish they did? He continued. Back then, I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I was afraid of the answer. But now, I think I know. She waited. He glanced down at his hands, then back up. I want people to see that I'm not weak just because I'm quiet. That I'm not broken just because I feel things deeply. Riley exhaled. That's not weakness, Elijah. That's strength. Most people numb out. You feel, and then you create from it. He smiled, small but real. That's why I'm glad it was you who saw me. They sat in that truth for a long while, and then Riley closed her journal. Elijah? Yeah. I think I want to tell you my name now. He looked at her, not eager, not pressing, just present. She bit her lip, heart pounding like it was the first letter all over again. My name is Riley. His eyes softened. Riley, he repeated, as if trying the syllables on his tongue. That's a good name. I wasn't ready before, she said. Not because I didn't trust you. I just didn't trust the world not to take it from me. But you've kept my words safe. Elijah reached into his backpack, pulled out the first letter she had ever written, edges worn, creased from too many rereadings. I kept every one, he said, even when I didn't feel like I deserved them. Riley blinked hard against tears. You did. Every single one. The next day, they walked through the hallway together for the first time. Nothing dramatic. No hand-holding. No grand announcement. Just Riley and Elijah, side by side, talking softly about nothing and everything. An art assignment, a book she loved, how weird it felt to walk like they belonged to this world now. They didn't need to hide anymore. They didn't need the locker to hold their connection, because they had chosen to show up. In person. In presence. In truth. On Friday, Riley placed one final letter in Elijah's locker. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. Elijah, you once said freedom wasn't escape, but being seen and still loved. You gave me that. Thank you for answering my question, not just with words, but with your life. This is the last letter I'll write you. Not because it's over. Because we don't need paper between us anymore. Riley. Elijah found it after lunch. Read it twice. Folded it carefully. Then, without saying a word, walked to the oak tree. She was there already, sketchbook in her lap. He sat beside her, and they stayed. No letters, no masks, no fear. Just two people who had learned, slowly and beautifully, how to be known. Chapter 12, Known. Graduation was 2 weeks away. Seniors buzzed with nervous energy, prom plans, cap and gown fittings, last-minute college essays, goodbyes disguised as casual hallway laughter. But for Riley, something felt different. She wasn't afraid of the ending. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't leaving behind a chapter. She was carrying it forward. Every letter, every sketch, every whispered moment of bravery that made her who she had become. And Elijah? He was still showing up. Still quiet. Still thoughtful. Still carrying more weight than he let most people see. But he walked straighter now. Looked people in the eye. Drew freely in the open. And he smiled. Not constantly, but often enough that those who knew the old him noticed. They met most afternoons beneath the oak tree. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes she read while he sketched. Sometimes they just watched the clouds shift and the leaves bend in the wind. There was peace there. A peace they had earned, letter by letter, truth by truth. One afternoon, Riley found a small package on her desk in English class. No label. No name. Inside, a handbound book. A journal. The title written across the front in neat, careful ink. Things You Taught Me. It was Elijah's handwriting. She opened it slowly. Each page held something different. A sketch of her laughing. A quote from one of her letters. A list titled, Ways You Showed Up When I Didn't Know How to Ask. A paragraph written in pencil. You taught me that being seen doesn't have to be painful. That softness isn't weakness. That honesty can be a kind of love. That letters may start a story, but presence writes the ending. She closed the book, pressing it gently to her chest. Tears welled, but they weren't sad tears. They were sacred. That weekend, they sat at a coffee shop downtown, tucked into a quiet booth by the window. It was the first time they'd hung out somewhere not connected to school. No oak tree, no library, no lockers. Just them. Do you ever miss the letters? Riley asked, stirring her tea. Elijah thought for a moment. Sometimes. But mostly. I think we became the letter. She tilted her head. What do you mean? You know how each note was a piece of truth? A step toward each other. She nodded. He leaned back, gaze soft. Well, now we are the truth. We show up. We stay. We know each other. And that's better. Riley smiled. I like that. They sat for a while, watching the world drift by outside. Then Elijah said, You ready to tell me the rest? She blinked. The rest. Your full name, he teased gently. You've had mine for weeks. She laughed. All right. Fine. But only because you made me a whole book. She leaned in, eyes warm. Riley Grace Morgan. He grinned. That suits you. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Because grace is what you give people. And you've been giving it to me since day one. Her heart swelled. And just like that, she realized. She didn't need a love story full of fire and obsession. She needed this. Steady. True. Rooted. Redemptive. Graduation came and went. Pictures were taken. Diplomas handed out. Tears shed in clumps behind the bleachers. In the chaos of that final day, Elijah found Riley by the tree. Their tree, one last time. He handed her an envelope. One last letter. I thought we were done with letters, she whispered. He shrugged, smiling. Some things deserve a final chapter. She opened it, heart pounding, fingers trembling just a little. Dear Riley Grace, I started this story afraid to be seen. You saw me. I walked through life, trying to disappear. You stayed. I thought letters were the safest way to speak. But you taught me how to use my voice in real life. If this is the end of our story, I'm okay, because we lived it well. But if it's the beginning of something new, I'm still here. Always. Elijah. She looked up from the letter. I don't want this to end, she said. It doesn't have to, he replied. And then, for the first time, she reached for his hand, not out of fear, not out of desperation, but out of certainty, because being known is not the same as being exposed. It's being loved anyway. Headphone lesson. Sometimes the most powerful stories begin quietly, not with fireworks, but with honesty. Not with romance, but with respect. In a world full of noise, be the letter someone needs. And if you're lucky enough to be seen, don't run. Stay. Because healing often begins where courage meets presence. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Ever After Audiobooks, where every story reminds us that faith, hope, and love still write the best endings.